The fourth episode of The Mandalorian is upon us, and it was one of the best yet. It's got everything. More Baby Yoda, some Mandalorian backstory, and a few new characters, and maybe even some romance. We've got all the details for you in the rest of the video, but beware, if you haven't seen it yet, there are spoilers ahead. The fourth chapter of The Mandalorian begins in an unnamed village, where people are peacefully fishing for neon blue krill. Suddenly, they find themselves under attack by a group of orc-looking aliens called Platunians, at least that's how I think you pronounce it, who raid their village and steal their entire crop. In the process, we see Omera hiding in the water with her daughter, and get the sense that they'll be pretty important later on. Meanwhile, we see the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda cruising around in space. Baby Yoda is messing around with the dashboard controls, and Mando tells him to quit it, in his best dad voice. It's clear that they're starting to form a father-son dynamic, and frankly, it's the best part of the show. He then reads off some specs about a low-key planet called Sorgan, and decides it's a fine place to chill out for a couple of months, away from the violence that plagued them in episode 3. As luck would have it, Sorgan is the same planet where all of that krill raiding took place just a few moments ago. When the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda arrive, they wind up in a tavern. Mando orders the baby a bone broth, but refuses one of his own, presumably because it's something to do with taking off his helmet to eat. More on that later. In a tavern, Mando spies a badass woman who we will come to know as Cara Dunne, a fighter for the rebellion who has been hiding out on the quiet planet since the Battle of Endor. She and the Mandalorian briefly come to blows, but when their fight is interrupted by Baby Yoda chowing down on some broth, they call a truce. It's not a totally friendly town, however, as Cara literally tells Mando that the town isn't big enough for the two of them, and since she got here first, it's up to him to find somewhere else to stay. Later, as he is packing up to leave, a couple of villagers who recognize him as a Mandalorian ask for his help in getting rid of the Platunians. He refuses at first, but quickly realizes that their extremely remote village might suit him and the baby perfectly, and he changes his mind. He finds Cara in the forest somehow and recruits her to help him secure the village. Once they arrive in the remote area, all of the local children fall head over heels for Baby Yoda, because of course they do. When Omera, the woman who we met at the very beginning, is showing the Mandalorian his lodgings, things get a little double entendre-y when she asks him how long it's been since he's taken that off, in front of someone else. She's referring to his helmet, of course, but there's definitely a vibe going on here. He tells her that he hasn't taken it off in public since he was a child, and we finally get some real backstory that we've been craving. He says that he was taken in by the Mandalorians after his parents' lives were ended in the war, and he doesn't take the armor off in front of people out of respect for the rules of the Mandalorians. He does take his helmet off to eat about a minute later, however, standing right in front of a window, so... Anyway, later on, Cara and Mando track down the Platunians into the forest and realize that they got more than they bargained for. The raiders have an AT-ST with them, which is a giant, robotic, two-legged fighting machine. This is where they draw the line, and they have to announce to the village that they can't take it down alone. After some back and forth, they wind up training the village to help them take on the raiders, and devise a plan to trap the AT-ST. Battle ensues, and just when it looks like the plan has gone awry, Cara lures the AT-ST into the trap and Mando throws an explosive in it, destroying it. The village celebrates, and then a few weeks pass, in which they have all been living in peace. So much so that Mando is thinking of leaving Baby Yoda with them and going out on his own. When Cara questions why he doesn't want to stay with Omera, the Mandalorian reveals that once you take the helmet off in front of someone else, you can never put it back on. She doesn't see a problem with that, and apparently he is now a bit on the fence about it too. Just as Mando becomes super duper tempted to take off his helmet and spend the rest of his days in the village, another bounty hunter almost takes out Baby Yoda. The Mandalorian realizes that they are never going to stop hunting him, and the only way to protect him is to keep moving. We loved this episode, and we can't wait to see what happens next. We really wanted the Mandalorian to take off his helmet. What about you? Do you think he should have stayed and raised Baby Yoda? What do you think is going to happen in next week's episode? Let us know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to CBR to keep up with all of our latest videos.